Alright everyone, we've got an interesting report here on China's trolling apparatus called Dragonbridge or Spamouflage. And I actually believe that the legacy media is genuinely reporting the truth on this one because it's been going on for a while. The fact is that China does have enormous networks of bots and spammers and so forth. It's continuous, like it's literally all over the internet and you can't go anywhere to get away from it. And you can sort of tell what the accounts are. Normally, because the English tends to be broken. It tends to be China-fied, so to speak. You've got some English in there, basically. And it's kind of formulaic what is being said generally. And the use of this particular network is to try to demoralize people who are critical of the Chi-Coms. And I have seen this on Twitter and elsewhere. I'm sure that this particular network has something to do with some of those instances, although there are people out there that just genuinely like China and communism, have no problem with Jinping, etc., including some people in the West. I find them hilarious, by the way. There's a term in China, I can't remember exactly what it was, for Western liberals that hate their own countries. Like they don't have that sense of civics that the Chinese have managed to maintain through communism, at least in the general sense. I can't remember what the term is actually for it. There are a lot of cucks, basically, in the Western world. China has been engaged in this for a while. I did want to point out, however, that the United States does the same thing too. I remember reading a report back at the end of the 2000s that the U.S. Air Force had several tens of thousands of bot accounts on Facebook at the time. They probably don't bother anymore. Who gives a shit about Meta? Nobody uses it. But that's been going on for a while. As soon as the internet was more of a popularized thing, the propaganda and disinfo and so forth began. And I use that term loosely because most of what's labeled disinformation is not. China, though, is definitely on the forefront of doing this sort of thing. I find it funny because for years there, Chinese propaganda was effectively ignored. Its importance was effectively discounted. Nobody cares what they're doing, etc. Russia was focused on. But China makes Russia look like a little toy poodle next to a Rottweiler when it comes to doing this. They have much more population. They have much more money. And therefore they have many more people capable of many more things with regards to this. So Dragonbridge is their new thing, I suppose. It's funny. They had the Great Cannon of China, where they could weaponize their entire processing power to attack Western websites and knock them off their ass almost instantaneously. So that was a thing years ago. But for the last few, it was all Russia. Now, Moscow got really, really good at it there for a while. They even managed to elect a U.S. president. I was told this by Intel professionals. You know, I was told this by the former head of the CIA and FBI and all of these other morons that have been completely discredited. No, it's China all the way down. Our enemy is still the commies. Russia is less communistic now, although apparently not much less authoritarian. To be clear, I'm not a Putin fan. You don't have to be gung-ho for Ukraine or anything like that, or be a warmonger to understand that Putin is actually an authoritarian. When you ban memes about you from the internet and literally put people in jail for making Putin memes, that's not necessarily the greatest look now, is it? China, though, takes it to the max, as you would expect from a dedicated communist state. I'm sure there'll probably be a couple of commie trolls in the comment section of this video cross-platform. I know that I've seen Chinese propagandists on BitChute, by the way. Apparently, a lot of them fixate on posting really racial or homophobic stuff. Well, they'd be right at home. I think most of those comments, though, there are genuine. It is a slight problem. It gets a little bit cluttered sometimes, but sort of takes me back to the days of the late 2000s on the YouTube comment section. Things were policed a lot less back then, so I'm used to it. It ain't my first rodeo, and I definitely don't take offense to people calling me racial slurs of one sort or another. You know, I don't care if somebody calls me a honky. Anyway, I just thought that this story was interesting because it shows, as far as disinfo and stuff, again, we keep getting told that it's far-right disinfo or it's Russian disinfo. That's the official line. This sort of narrative breaks, actually. It's interesting the legacy media would even report on it because China is a communist country. Certainly, they're no friends of like MAGA or Trump. Trump was waging a fucking trade war against them. The fact that he could be in the same room with Jinping, shake hands, and they not throttle one another actually is kind of funky. But the trade war was real. It did damage to the Chinese economy. A little bit to the U.S. economy at times as well. Kind of depends on what good you're putting a tariff on now, doesn't it? This is an interesting story for that reason. It breaks the narrative. You're telling me that China has this one particular network, of course to the exclusion of all the others, of hundreds of thousands of accounts fielded by the Chinese, dwarfs anything that we heard about interfering with the 2016 election now, doesn't it? Again, if the Chi-Coms want to weaken the United States, and this is my political opinion, but it's right, and most of you probably agree, then they would be supporting Biden. You know, they'd say, okay, we're aiming the great cannon of China at the Trump's campaign webpage because we got to make sure that the weak-ass, feeble old man gets back into office so he can continue humiliating himself, pooping his undergarments, and we can take Taiwan maybe in a few years. That's what they would want. They don't want a strong leader for the Western world, or for the United States in general. Why the fuck would they want that? They can have their way more easily if they have an administration in D.C. that is feckless and perceived of, even by its allies, as weak, which is what the Biden... cat's trying to feed me your hair. Which is what the Biden campaign is perceived as all around the world. All world leaders consider Joe Biden to be pathetic. The fucking president of Rwanda finds him to be pathetic. Probably doesn't want him to show up. He'd be sniffing too many of the little villager children or something like that. I'm sure. Yeah, Biden never involved himself in sex tourism during all of his trips to foreign countries when he was a senator, by the way. I have it on good word that he kept it in his pants back when he could actually get it up. I don't think so. I'm sure the CIA has some super drug that can allow him to get at least a little bit of a chub going on. Anyways, as far as spamouflage goes, and it's a funny term actually, I guess the whole object of it is to attempt to humiliate and troll people off the internet if they're too critical of China. I'm surprised. I mean, disclaimer, YouTube, I'm just joking about this. Hey, it's a joking statement. Hey, China, can you aim some of that engagement my way? Because YouTube keeps cock-blocking me with the algorithms. You know, if a bunch of Chinese bots want to watch my videos, I have absolutely no problem with that. I would find it funny. I don't care if you say crazy shit in the comments section. You should check out my comments. It's probably a reason why they don't show up. They'd be outclassed by a bunch of clanking trolls, so be a problem. Clankdom wins a war against China on the internet. That's about all. Peace out.